week 13 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few quarterbacks I have as sleepers this week. The first one, Derek Carr of the New Orleans Saints. I know this season they got off to a good start. It was the same team. And then Derek Carr was banged up. He didn't do much. But the last couple weeks since he's returned to the lineup, he's put up some decent numbers. Week 10 versus the Falcons, 269 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 17 rush yards. And week 11 versus the Browns, 248 pass yards, 2 touchdowns. So this week, a middle-of-the-pack matchup versus the Los Angeles Rams. They give up the 17th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And ever since Dennis Allen got fired, this offense has a little bit of a different look. It looks like this New Orleans Saints team, they're going out there, they're playing better, and Taysom Hill's getting more involved in the offense, opening things up. So this week versus the Rams, if you're in a pinch in deeper leagues and 2 quarterback leagues, I think Derek Carr is a decent sleeper option, and he's available right now in 86% of fantasy leagues. Next quarterback, Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young, the last 3 weeks, he's definitely looked better than he was even last season, and of course, especially early in the season before he got benched for Andy Dalton. It's a few games since he returned to the lineup. Week 9 versus New Orleans, 171 pass yards, touchdown, interception, 9 rush yards. Week 10 versus the Giants, 126 pass yards, a touchdown, 30 rush yards. And then week 12 last week, he almost pulled it off with an upset victory versus the Chiefs, losing at the buzzer on a field goal, 263 pass yards, a touchdown, 20 rush yards. So this week, a good matchup on paper versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that give up the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. I know Tampa Bay went into New York last week. They shut down that offense, but Bryce Young's definitely improved from watching on the sidelines and learning from a veteran like Andy Dalton. So another quarterback out there in tons of fantasy leagues in 95%, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if he actually had another decent game this week. And the third and final quarterback I have as a sleeper this week is Will Levis of the Tennessee Titans. Will Levis, the last couple weeks, his numbers have gone up. He's available in 88% of fantasy leagues. And this Titan team pulled off a nice upset last week versus division rival, the Houston Texans. Week 10 at the Chargers, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, 41 rush yards. Week 11 versus the Vikings, 295 pass yards, a touchdown, 18 rush yards, and interception. And week 12 at Houston, 278 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, 10 rush yards, and a fumble loss. He's still turning the football over at a decent amount, is Will Levis. He's still taking some big hits and sacks, but he's going out there, and he's been a tough guy as well. We've seen it over the last season since he's coming into the league. He's taking big hits, but he keeps getting up, and he keeps continuing to drive that football down the field with the big arm. So Will Levis, Calvin Ridley, they're locked in. Chigga Kwango, we saw he had a 70-yard touchdown. And Nick Westbrook-Akeen's been a nice deep ball threat as well. So he's got some decent weapons. And this week at the Commanders, they give up the 11th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And we saw Cooper Rush have a good game versus them last week. I think Levis could be a decent sleeper this week. So that's a few quarterbacks I have as sleepers for week 13 of the fantasy football season.